Hey guys, what's up, man? Thanks for taking a few minutes and tuning in to today's video. Much appreciated. And today we're going to get back into some bait modification secrets. Been drifting off to some other subjects lately. If you guys just saw, I did the little live scope rant, been doing some legend stuff like that. Just sort of mixing it up a little bit, and but got another juicy little bait modification tip for you today. And hey, just one thing I'd like to remind you guys before we get started here. If you guys ever want to order any of this stuff that I'm talking about, I've included the Fish the Moment Tackle Warehouse link in the description here. If you guys order through Tackle Warehouse and you use this link, Johnny and I get a little bit of that proceeds, a little bit of the profit off that helps keep the bills on here at night. So we'd much appreciate that. So anyway, let's get into this spring jig modifications secrets that I do. Sort of things that I've came up with from 40 plus years of jig fishing. And I am a jig fishing fanatic, man. I've always loved it. I don't know if a lot of you guys may have tuned in for the Fish the Moment virtual seminar Johnny and I did on jig fishing. We talked about a lot of different stuff, but there's a lot to talk about on jigs, and I'm going to be doing a lot of tips and modifications over moving forward. I mean, because there are different modifications and different jig setups for different seasons, so we got a lot to talk about. But specifically, what I want to talk to you guys about today is how I like to as far as I like to tell you the trailers I use for jig fishing in the spring and how I like to modify them based upon a lot of different situations. And I'm going to stick just to the trailer modification. I'm not going to get to the jig setup and different profiles and stuff like that. It's more about the specific modification of each trailer. So basically what I've got here, in the springtime of the year, there's two different jig setups that I like. I like the big full-sized jig for like some pre-spawn applications and for some heavy-duty flipping applications. For example, if you have a lot of flooded cover or if you have a lot of dirty water. And sometimes in the early pre-spawn, if I'm fishing like channel banks, sometimes I'll use a little bit, more full-size jig. And if I'm fishing a lake that has a lot of largemouth in it, I'll go to a full-size jig a lot. That's my favorite setup to fish because it produces, some really quality fish. And then the second jig setup I use is my finesse jigs. And I use those a lot when I'm fishing around like boat docks, areas that have water visibility of over 3 foot clarity, lakes that have a lot of spotted bass or smallmouth bass. Finesse jigs are really good in the pre-spawn time of the year. So I'm going to show you guys how I modify my trailers for all three. So let's get into it here. I'm going to start out with my first one. This is the Zoom Big Salty Chunk. And if you guys have watched some of that stuff in the past, I talk about this. This is my favorite jig trailer. It looks just like an old plastic pork frog. I mean, that's basically what it is. And I used pork frogs forever. I would still use them if they made them like they used to, but they quit making them and they came out with them again. They're not really like they used to be, but a lot of times nothing will beat pork in the springtime of the year. I really like it. But the Zoom Big Salty Chunk is pretty dang close to it. And this is how it comes from the package like this. You can see it looks just like a pork chunk. So the modification that I use on the Big Salty Chunk is designed to basically, it helps me, I think it helps me get a few more strikes, but mainly it helps me land more fish. And what I do is I reduce some of the mass off of the chunk in order to have less plastic in the way of the hook. And the way that I do that is, you can see the ridges here. I come in there and I knock off all the ridges on the side, all the way around. And by doing this, I'm eliminating plastic that's going to get in the way of the hook. So I've come in like that and I've sort of taken some of it off, you can see. And the next thing, which is the most important aspect of it, is see on the front where you put your hook in there like that, you want to take and you want to thin that out a lot on the front here. So what this does is when you hook your pork frog in, that part of it there, you have a lot less plastic for the hook to come through. You've got a lot more basically bite gap for the hook to have on there. And finally I'll take and I'll split the leg all the way up to the pork frog like that. So the difference between the two, and sometimes, like another thing sometimes I'll do is I'll take some This is, some of the hard edges are sort of unrealistic, so sometimes I'll maybe round it off just a little bit like that, just sort of make it look a little bit more natural, you know, because in nature, you know, you don't have many hard edges. So it's sort of like that. So here's the difference in the two. You can see this is the front side of it like that. This is the side profile of the two like that. And that's just, like I said, it's a slight modification that will help you hook more fish. Another thing on the pork frog, guys, I'll remind you guys one more time, because I see a lot of people making this mistake, and I've talked about it before, is when you're hooking a jig, and I don't even have a jig in the shop here, but anyway, when you're hooking your chunk on your jig, make sure that it's like this. You know, come up with your hook like that. Don't throw it where the top like this is on the top of the facing up. You want to make sure that this part of the chunk is facing up. You just get a lot better fall with that. It looks a lot more natural. Okay, the second one that I'm talking about is the Zoom Super Chunk. This is a little bit different trailer. You can see it's just a little bit different profile. This been around for a long time. And there's on the big solid chunk, there's only one way to rig it, and that's threading it on like a pork frog on the end. But on the super chunk, you can either thread this thing on, or you can throw it on or put it on like a pork frog as well. So there's two different ways to rig that. If you hook it on as a jig, like a pork frog, it creates a bigger profile. If you thread it on, it's a little bit more compact. So the first thing that I do on this, it's the same thing with it. I want to reduce the thickness off of this back here. So regardless if I'm threading it on or putting it in, the first thing I do is I want to come up to where it sort of comes a little bit more to a V. So I'm taking some of the plastic off the sides here on it. And then the next thing I do on this, since it's small, I just take all the way across and I just cut half of it off like that, where it's thin like that. And then I'll come up and on the legs, I'll split the legs in the middle. I think this just gives a little bit better action. Like that. So the difference that you have in this, again, this is the way that they look right here. Basically, I've taken the bulk off of it, you know, made it thinner on the side so I have less plastic to penetrate. And I can still, even the way I've got this rigged here, I can still thread it on a hook, or I can hook it just like a pork frog. And finally, the next thing I do, if I'm using any type of a green pumpkin or a watermelon, I almost always, you know, use some type of chartreuse dye on it. I just think that gives a lot better look. So basically, here's the two differences in the two jig setups I have on there like that. You can see subtle differences, but I'm telling you guys that when you're fishing jigs, subtle differences make a big difference as far as hooking and landing those fish and getting a few more subtle bites. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is my finesse jig trailer. And my finesse jig trailer is the Zoom Little Critter Craw. It's what I use most all the time for them. Sometimes I'll use a Zoom, like a twin tail grub, but most of the time I'm using this Little Critter Craw on a finesse jig. Get a lot of bites with it. It's a length that I can use it on different size finesse jigs because it's about 3 inches long. But the modification I normally do on this particular thing, I normally fish this on like a, say a 5/16, like a, you know, some type of a jewel finesse jig. So I want a small profile on the bait. So what I do right off the bat is, see they're segmented here. I go to the third segment and I cut that segment off to where it's down like that. And then I take and I cut the side legs off like this. The reason I cut the side legs off is the side legs create a lot of drag on it and it'll slow the jig down a lot. And normally I don't want that. And then I cut the feelers off, because by cutting the feelers off, you can see some more of a separation in the pinchers. And then I'll take, again, normally I'll take like a pen, like a dipping, some type of a marking pen, and I'll put a little puff of chartreuse on the tails again we got here. So here's the difference. Here's my craw, the modified craw that I use on the jig trailer. And here is the same one out of the package again. You can see quite a bit of difference there. As you guys can see, the color's different. You know, the look of the bait's completely different. You can see there. And sometimes it makes a big difference, especially on a finesse jig. So anyway, guys, that's my modification there. That's my spring jig modifications. Like I said, all these modifications, what it does, number one, it's going to build your confidence because you're doing something a little bit different than everybody else. Number two, all these modifications are going to allow you to hook the bass better because you've reduced some of the mass off of the plastic. That's going to give you a better hook set. And then some of these modifications, again, I think it just adds up to a few more bites here and there during the course of a day. And that's what it's all about, is just getting an occasional bite here. So anyway, guys, that's today's tip. Thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. Again, thanks for tuning into the videos, guys, very much. We're up over 27,000 subscribers now, and still we got 60% of everybody not subscribing. So if you like this video and you've taken the time to watch it, you know, just please hit that subscribe button. Much appreciated, and like the video if you will. And also, man, you know, you guys need to subscribe because, like I said, when I hit 50,000 subscribers, which I'm figuring it's going to be like in the month of June, I'm going to be giving away a free on-the-water lesson on Table Rock Lake, you know, sharing any secrets you guys want me to share with you and spending the day on the water together. So subscribe to the channel to be eligible for that drawing there. So anyway, hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back soon.